Welcome back to Season 2 of Conversations with Colie podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Miller, the author of the book series A through Z Guide to Raising a Good Human, a book series that I wrote to start the communication process between parents and children, starting from birth and why conversation is important. This year, I want to invite you to join me and my guests as we talk about all the subjects and topics that we hear about in everyday life, like human trafficking, grief, relationships, near-death experiences, and all the insights that we can learn from these subjects and topics, and how to look at things from both sides of the spectrum without using bias. Join me and my guests this season as we heat up the summer and the airwaves with our hot topics, and we start opening the doors and shaking out the rugs that we have been carrying with us through generations to truly be the change.
Welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Colie. Today I'm talking with Stephany Ann. Stephany Ann has a story of transformation. As a survivor of narcissistic abuse, Stephany now dedicates her time to helping others break free from their grasp. Welcome, Stephany.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Nicole.
Thank you for being here. Before we get started, I always ask an icebreaker question. What's your favorite thing about the upcoming Thanksgiving holiday?
Oh, okay. Good question, because I have not even thought about that. Just being with family and friends, and grateful that I have a strong family and a strong support system. So just time to spend with them.
Awesome. I agree 100%. Tell us about yourself.
So, for years, I felt like I was living a completely different story through the lens of why me. And only recently do I feel like I've broken a pattern of calling people into my life through relationships that will teach me the lessons that I still needed to learn, about owning this as my story. As for a long time, I didn't want to own this as my story. There's a lot of shame, embarrassment, guilt around these conversations and around these stories. And so I didn't want to accept that it was my story. But I really needed to learn how to own it as my story and not someone else's story. And, it's a story of healing those parts within me that had me feeling so unworthy of love for so long that I would call these people into my life over and over again that would reflect that back to me, whether it was through the belittlings, the criticisms, the manipulation, just through the feeling of never feeling like I was enough for them. But, they would show up as exactly the exact teachers I needed at that time. And I can say now, though, for a very long time, I saw these two men who fit into this role as monsters. So, over the years, I would continue to ask, why me? Why me? I don't deserve this. And I could see the manipulation. I could see the lies. I could see the deception. And even someone with my background I was a domestic violence advocate, as a lawyer as well. And here I am in these two abusive marriages. And it took me a long time before I even realized what was happening and what was going on, because sometimes it's just so intense that you don't know you're in this marriage.
It happens gradually, and then once you're in the vortex, so it's hard to see because it's right in your face.
Exactly.
Too know exactly what you went through. Did you have a childhood that was in any way, shape, or form abusive?
No, I didn't. And this is what makes my situation It is very different. It's the small percentage that we don't. I did not come from a chaotic family. I did not
Right.
come from a broken family. My parents are still married.
Right.
They've
And
been
you
married
had
for
that
over
quote
45
unquote
years.
good example of what a type of
Exactly.
close family, because that's a misconception I hear a lot from people as well. They were set up for success because they were raised by this close, tight-knit family. But it can happen to anyone.
Oh, absolutely. And it that happened to me, who this was my field. This is what I worked in.
Right. Right.
And so if it can happen to me from a good family, a positive family, my background in domestic violence, let
Yeah.
me tell you, it can happen to anyone. There's
Yeah.
no specific formula that says, oh, because your life was like this, then this is going to be your future. No.
Thank you for saying that, because a lot of times, especially from my standpoint, I come from the generational trauma line and the abuse line. And so people go, well, it was just a precursor for you. In a sense, that's kind of what the stigma is attached to me. And that's been hard for me to reconcile. Like, who decides how my life is going to be, and as compared to your life? Now, what if I did all the right things and came from all the right places? You are living proof that it can happen to anybody, and it does, because those people are manipulative. And so
Oh, absolutely.
they show themselves as something that they're not. So can you describe how you met maybe one of these relationships, or if you can combine if they had any similarities to get you ensnared in the trap, is what I say.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with my second husband because it's a shorter story,
Yeah.
thankfully. But it is very, very intense. So for him, I had gone through a divorce and a separation with my first husband. And when it had been a couple of years, so I really felt like I was healed. I felt like I did a lot of the hard work. And I felt like I was ready to start dating again. And so I put out my list to the universe. I wanted tall, dark, handsome. I wanted someone who was not in the medical field because, they're all cheaters. And that was my experience with my first husband. So I was very, very specific to
Mm-hmm.
the universe when I put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
And a week later, I met a man who fit every single box. See, a divorced dad, only with boys, he fit everything I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we met online, which is, it is harder because how can you really tell? And I thought I was doing it right. I'm like, I've already gone through this traumatic first marriage. I want this one to be right. And so I was like, well, let's not meet. Let's just really get to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so that it's not physical, that we're actually getting to know each other. And
Yeah.
so we spent a couple months just really getting to know each other. And when we did actually meet, I was already in love with him. And
Right.
so, it's the honeymoon phase. And because we never met in person, I couldn't talk to his friends. I didn't talk to his family. I didn't talk to his children because I also did not want him to meet my children.
Right.
And so I couldn't see the red flags because everything he said to me was everything I wanted to hear.
Yes. Yes. And
You
sometimes the
are,
family won't tell you either, though. Even if you met
oh,
them, they don't
mhm.
tell you. Yeah.
No, they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I when he said, "Oh, we're soulmates," well, that resonated because I had just manifested him.
Yes.
I mean, he literally marked
Yes.
everything in the box, and so it wasn't weird when he would say, "Oh, well, let's." Why things moved so quickly because I also felt like he was a gift from God. He's my gift from God.
Yeah. And when it's love, it's love. You hear those stories
Yeah,
of, I knew my husband of 25 years or 40 years. After 3 months, we were married. You hear those stories as you go
yeah,
along. Mm-hmm. So you
yeah.
think this is your parent.
Yeah, yeah. And, I mean, and so when we did meet in person, it was like, oh my God, I'm in love with you. And it all happened very quickly after that. We met, fell in love, and got married within the same year. And I truly had no doubts that he was not a gift from God. And he was great for that first year. And, people say, well, didn't you see red flags? Well, yes and no. Again, when I met his family, they praised him. Oh, he's such a great guy. He's so wonderful. Stephany, we love you so much. We're so glad you're a part of our family. Okay, well, little did I know that he beat up his first wife multiple times, and she, all this stuff. He's beat up all this.
Yeah.
And yes,
They don't
I
warn
should
you.
have
They
done
welcome you in. Oh,
exactly.
You're doing such a good thing. Yes.
Well, and I think some of it is they are also hoping that you are the good person who's going to change them.
Yes.
No, but they're not going to change because it is who they are, and they have to change themselves. It doesn't matter how much I love him, how much I beg and plead with him to change. He's not going to.
And he's a narcissist, so of course it was her fault she got beat up, right? Probably to his family.
Oh, yeah.
Fault. He pushed me to it because that's what they tell you.
Oh yeah, nothing was ever his fault.
Right.
And so, he at the time I was running 2 wineries, and so, I'm in the world of alcohol right now, and so his drinking did not bother me because
it was
I'm
normal.
just in that, and I later found out that he was hiding vodka bottles, but I didn't see all of that.
Yeah.
And I wasn't looking for it because, we trust. And so he moved up to us. We had lived 3.5 hours away, and he moved over, and we got married very, very quickly, and everything was great until we got married. And we say that's when they really hook you in. And so it was after we got married that I started noticing some of his behaviors. I started noticing some of the manipulation, some of the lies. And this would be like the devaluation phase. And so, you start out in the honeymoon phase, and then you have the devaluation phase, and then you have love bombing, devaluation, love bombing, devaluation. And all of that forms this trauma bond that keeps you connected to this person.
Yep.
And so a trauma bond, in case, listeners don't know exactly what it is, I like to refer to it as kind of like a drug addiction. So if you use drugs, the first time you use something, you get this high, this huge dopamine rush. And then every time you use again, you're trying to get that first high. But you never get that first high. It's a little less every time you use. But you get addicted and hooked because you're constantly trying to reach that high dopamine level.
Chasing the dragon is what they call it.
Chasing the dragon. And so similarly, when you are in a trauma bond, you're trying to get to that first honeymoon phase when you met this person, when you fell in love with this person, because you know that they know how to treat you right. You know that they know how to love because they did all of that in the beginning. And so you become hooked because you're like, okay, a little criticisms, a little meanness, we can get through that because you're waiting for that next high. But you never get
and they
that.
tell you, I don't know if yours did, but I know in my situation, I would be told, I'm trying to work on it. I'm trying to work on it.
Anything to keep you continually hooked, because the thing is they can't be mean the entire time because no one would stay.
Right.
But it's the intermittent reinforcement. There's when it's good, it's great. When it's bad, okay, well, it's bad, but there's enough good in my love bucket here that I can know that I can get through the bad part because there's going to be more love coming, and so that is the trauma bond that keeps you hooked. And And a lot of narcissists like to rush marriage because once you're married, it is so much harder. Once you have a child with them, it is so much harder. Once you have a life with them, it is so much harder to break the trauma bond, to break out of it, because you're just stuck in this cycle of love bombing, devaluation, love bombing, devaluation, and it is just goes around and around and around, and you go nowhere. You're not going up. You're not moving forward in your life. You're just on a little Ferris wheel.
Yeah. Did you notice at any time a change in yourself?
Yeah, I did. And so, we got married in December 2019, and then the world shut down. And so it was very confusing, because that's when the devaluation started as well. And I did not know if this was just COVID and everyone just pissed off.
Right.
And that's why, and that's why his behavior was like this, or if this truly was who he was.
Right.
And so I kept constantly working on myself. Well, it must be me. Well, if I could love him how he needs to be loved. Okay, Jason, how do you need to be loved? Tell me how you need to be loved so I can love you this way. Or I remember, like, I'm a big follower of the Gottmans and the Gottman Institute and their model of love and relationships. And I remember they had a online course that they were offering during COVID. And I bought the course. I'm like, let's do this, because obviously there's we're missing something.
Yeah.
You know what? 3 years later, it's still sitting in a box. We've never done it, because the thing is that it's not you. And I just kept trying to change all these things, like, okay, well, maybe if I do this, or maybe if I do this, or maybe if I do this. And it's like, nothing's ever good enough. Nothing's ever right. I couldn't figure him out. Right. And that's what they want. They want to be a mystery. And as soon as you start to figure them out, they change, they switch it up. It's something completely different.
Yep. Or they ask more of you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And, and the things that he told me he loved about me, and the reasons why he fell in love with me in the beginning. You're a strong woman. I love that you're a lawyer. Oh, that's so great. I love all your friends. They're strong, independent, feminist women. I love your friends. Oh my gosh. But when the devaluation came, it's like, I can't stand these women. Oh my gosh, them. Oh, I hate that. Oh, and then, it's like my politics were completely different now. Oh, how could you do that? Oh, you're a lawyer. Lawyers are they're horrible, terrible people. And how could you even do, and it's like, it becomes so confusing. And that's what they call, with like the cognitive dissonance and the gaslighting. Like, they just keep you in this state of confusion. It's like, well, you told me you loved all those things about me in the beginning. Oh, no, I didn't. I never said that. No, I've always hated your friends. I never said that.
Yep. Or I don't remember. I don't remember saying
I don't remember saying that, but I don't think I would have said that.
Yep.
And so they keep you in this constant state of confusion where you don't know what is reality and what is truth and what's not. And then throw in 2020 in there. It was a mind F.
A whole mind fuck. You can say mind.
Yes.
Is your toddler right there?
No, he's over there.
Okay.
Yeah, but they keep you in the state of like, I have no idea what is going on.
Yes. You're describing my last relationship. You are describing it to me, because it's textbook of what they're doing. So tell me what really kind of switched it up where you decided, okay, I cannot anymore.
So it was, I felt like I was going crazy. And he would make comments like, well, you need help, Stephany, or you need, and it's like, no. So I stopped drinking, because I'm like, I need to know what is going on. I can't have like my senses dulled right now. And so thankfully, it was 2020 again, so all the wineries were closed. Everything, I lived in Oregon, so everything shut down for a very long time.
Right.
And so, and then I went back to journaling because I needed to know what was reality and what was happening. And so, before I completely answer that question, there's
Yeah.
one other thing. It's called triangulation, and it's
Yeah.
where, the perfect example is my first husband, who was a covert narcissist. He was a cheater. He cheated. He looked for validation and admiration from women outside the marriage. That was his
Right.
thing.
Right.
And so my second husband, Jace, he knew all of this.
Weaponized.
And and he knew it was an insecurity for me. And so during the devaluation period, he would like if he went somewhere, he would come back and be like, "Oh, I just met like all these hot girls at the grocery store, and they invited me back to their house to go hot tubbing, and I think I might go."
Oh my
Or
gosh, yes. Yes.
or man, Stephanie, it's so crazy. I got another phone number today. I don't know what is up with all these women. They're constantly giving me my phone number.
Yeah.
And towards the end of all that, when I really worked through a lot of this stuff, I was like, great, go have fun. You're a good looking guy. I mean, but
Yeah.
then it started to not work because he wasn't getting a reaction. And that's what they're seeking, to
Yep.
control you emotionally. And when you give them that reaction, that's control.
Yeah. When you
So
wouldn't give the right reaction, did he escalate the behavior and to almost domestic, like put your hands on? Would it
um
throw him into an anger?
it I think kind of towards the end, yes,
Yeah.
it did, because he could no longer use that as a way to control me. And
Yeah.
I just stopped caring about a lot of things, and I just stopped reacting. And
Right.
it was then that our marriage ended very quickly once I stopped reacting.
Yeah.
And so in 2020, he was just becoming more horrible, more horrible, more horrible, and just heavily drinking. I saw all the drinking, and I just didn't want to be around him. So I would take the children and we would just be gone all day. And he just started to repulse me that way. But I still didn't know what it was.
Mhm.
Like, you're an alcoholic, okay, but is that domestic violence? Like, what is domestic
Right.
violence and stuff? But
Right.
there was so much uh psychological and emotional, and the manipulation and the
Yep.
gaslighting, that it
Yep.
until you really take a step back, because
Yeah.
when you're in it, it's like you just see little nuggets, but then when you step back, you can see it all in the totality and be like, oh my god, this
Yeah. And
oh,
you
this
get
is
to
horrible.
Yeah, and you get to a point, no matter how long or short you stay, where you say, "How the hell did I not see it?" Because when we're in it, sometimes we paint it as that Pinterest perfect life. We
Oh,
post pictures,
absolutely.
we're smiling, we're doing our TikToks and things in amongst that abuse that's happening.
Oh yeah. And for because he wasn't physically violent, it's hard to reconcile. Oh, well, that's domestic violence. Well,
Right.
I consider he was toxic masculinity, and I consider that as domestic violence. And a lot of people would disagree. But
I
with
don't.
the toxic masculinity and all of this other stuff on top of it, in the totality, it's like, holy, yeah, get out and run. And so, we actually, there was a time one night, late in the evening. So we had five boys together. He had three and I had two.
Yeah.
And my one of my sons got his finger slammed into the door, and it was just dangling. And so I needed to run him to the ER. He ended up getting 10 stitches in his finger. And when I came back, like, Jace was just, he was a nightmare. And so I took out my phone. I'm like, well, I'm going to record him because he denies it every time. And I'm like, well, maybe if I record it and then I can show him in the morning when he's sober and he can see like, this is what you've been doing.
Yeah.
So I take out my phone to record him, and all of a sudden, Nicole, he looked like the devil. And he attacked me and wrestling the phone out of my hands. And my phone actually called 911. And I didn't know my phone had called 911 because after he got off of me and stuff, I grabbed my kids and I was like, I'm going somewhere else for the night.
Yeah.
And so I did that. And then I got a call back saying, hey, your phone called 911. Is everything okay? Well, I decided that I was going to file a restraining order against him. And I never went back to the house, but I needed him out of the house. So I filed a restraining order. He got out of the house. We went completely no contact for almost 2 months until his mother kept calling me and emailing me. Please, he loves you so much.
Oh my God,
He's
yes.
changed. He's
Oh, yes.
changed, Stephany.
Yes.
Please, he misses you. He's so sorry. Please just
So miserable
drop the
with it.
restraining order. He's
Never
a
do it
good
again.
guy. He just made a mistake. He wasn't trying to hurt you. He was just trying to grab the cell phone, which, I mean, that goes to the gaslighting as well. It's like trying to play with your mind that what he was attacking me.
Yeah.
Not just reaching for my cell phone,
Yeah.
and it's like,
yeah.
And so again, it was so confusing because here we are in 2020. It's like, okay, did this really happen? Was he just trying to get my phone, or was, it was like, it was just so confusing.
Yeah.
And so I finally, after 2 months, I gave in and I went and met him. And we talked and I said, okay, well, here are the things that you would have to do to be back with me. You have to do an AA program. You have to do an abuser program. And he was like, okay, yeah, I will do them. Well, mind you, again, it's 2020. And so there's nothing in person. It's all online.
Right.
And so again, looking back, he didn't take these things seriously. He just sat there, and I don't even know if I saw the bills, so I know we were paying for it, but
but you don't know if he was actually paying any attention.
Exactly, because one, nobody changes in 2 months, and so when he's doing all this, I let him come back in, and there was about 4 months where everything was great again. It was like back to the honeymoon phase again. And I was like, oh, okay, this is the person I fell in love with. And maybe it was just the alcohol or this, like, he's a great person. But then he started making his comments again, I found out that he had started drinking again when I went to the garage and found all these hidden vodka bottles and stuff. And it was like, okay, they don't change unless they want to, and everything was a lie. And so I just kept praying. I'm like, God, I don't know how to get out of this, but this is not what I want. And by that time, though, I was pregnant. We were not planning on having a baby. I've done natural family planning and never have had a whoops. But here I was with
and then you go, was that divine intervention saying we belong together and we're going to work through it?
It's like, it's just, but I just kept praying. I'm like, God, just, whatever it takes to get him to become aware of what he's doing. And, he was drunk and he wrecked one of my cars. And again, he had a reason for it. Oh, I actually, everything was justified.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. And he finally actually became hospitalized for pancreatitis because of his drinking. And he's young, we're in our early 40s.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, okay, this is my answer to prayers. He almost died. He spent a month in the hospital recovering. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, he's gonna stop drinking. He's gonna change. He's gonna be aware now.
Yeah.
And as soon as he got out of the hospital, he did for like a month. He was great again. And then his ex-wife died of COVID. And so now the three boys who were only with us temporarily came to
Oh.
live with us full time. And then we couldn't find a house big enough for all of us. And we were like, well, let's just move to Florida. Let's just have a fresh start, a new beginning. And again, I thought it was all going to be great. Maybe if he has some sunshine in his life,
Yeah.
again, it's
Yeah.
like it's all
Sounds
about him.
good. Mm-hmm.
Is we cater to him because it's like anything to get the peace,
Better.
to help him become aware or this and that. And Florida didn't help either because it's not about Florida. It's not about sunshine. It is him.
Right.
And so when we were there, there was a lot of other little stressors going on in life. But one day he flipped out and he went into this narcissistic rage. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Oh, yeah.
It was the most terrifying experience that I've ever went through. And so a narcissistic rage, if you can think of like a full grown, I mean, he's almost 6'4", 270 probably.
Yeah,
He's not a small person.
Mhm.
And he just had the biggest temper tantrum. He looked like the Incredible Hulk.
Yep, I've seen that before.
Yeah. And I mean, his veins popping, his eyes bright red, and he just terrorized all of us for 3 weeks. And when he started putting the children down, so at this point we had 6 boys, 14 and under. And I actually, when I called him out on it, what he was doing, and he needed to stop doing this to the boys, then he spent the next 2.5 weeks focusing all his rage on me.
Yeah.
And so I had a friend in Florida, a couple blocks from our house, and I said, hey, our life is not actually what we portray in the public. So this is what's going on. I need a safe house if me and the boys need to get away.
Yeah.
And I called his grandma because it was the only person that he respected. And I said, look, this is going on and I don't know how much longer I can stay. And I don't know if I can protect all the boys because honestly, I have to protect myself and my 3 biological children because that's what I have control over.
Right.
And so he just started provoking and tormenting and provoking and tormenting. And he would keep me up all night, kicking me off the bed, calling me every horrible, disgust. Yeah, slamming doors, mumbling under his breath, like aggressive, but then super passive aggressive, like just walking around the house, like punching the walls, doing all of this stuff. And I was just like, I need to get out of here. But it's like I have 6 children, and a dog. I need to get out of here in the safest way possible. So, here I am.
A darling animal right now. And you do have to walk on eggshells. People don't understand. You can't just walk out the door freely. There is a way you have to navigate that when they're in that rage, because that's where your life is at most risk.
Oh yeah. And like I said, I've never experienced anything like this. I came from good families. I've never, even all the other stuff, yes, my first husband was a cheater, but that's very different than someone just traumatizing and raging and throwing things and punching walls and slamming doors. Like, it was terrifying.
Yeah.
And so one night, like, I just had enough. Like, he just wouldn't stop. And, in hindsight, looking back, it's like, okay, well, this is the discard. This is the final. It's his way of getting rid of me because I stopped putting up with his shit. I stopped reacting to things. I was like, sure, go hot tubbing with all the girls. I don't care. Have
Yeah.
fun. You're a good looking guy. Why would they not?
Yeah. Yeah. And let
Once
them
you
have
stop
you.
giving,
Yeah, you
yeah,
do. You get to a
go
point
have
where you're
fun.
like, fucking please find your next
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, yeah. And so, and I was trying to safety plan and figure out a way to leave safely. But one night he just kept provoking. And mind you, this is like 3 weeks now of tormenting and provoking.
Yeah.
And I just snapped and I rolled over and I punched him and I said, leave me the fuck alone. I'm out of here. In the morning, me and my kids, we are gone.
Yeah.
And he rolled me back over and he said, bitch, you're going to jail tonight. And then he like beat the shit out of me.
Oh my
He
God.
destroyed my phone. He did all this stuff. And, I'm 5'9", but I was probably like 130 pounds,
Yeah.
like he's almost 6'4", this huge guy. You think my little punch would do anything to him? No, no. And so I go outside because he calls the cops.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'm just going to go outside. And sure enough, I was actually the one that got arrested that night.
Yeah.
And
Because
he had his whole story. He had his story. And the arresting officer, I'm like, why am I being arrested? And she said, well, he had blood on his face. And his story makes more sense than yours. Well, when I punched him, he didn't have blood on his face.
Yeah.
And so I know that there were some other things going on
Yeah.
over there. And so I did. I went to jail but then I got out and got a good attorney and stuff and went no contact. Well, later that night, I got a call from my sister and she said, Stephany, your baby has drowned. We don't know if he's dead or alive, but he's at the hospital.
Holy shit.
So my baby was a year and a half, and we lived in Florida on the Gulf,
Yeah.
on the water. The water's in our backyard.
Yeah.
And
I lived in the same area. So
yeah, and so I called the hospital, but they wouldn't talk to me because he didn't put me down as the mother.
what? Oh my God. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
So and I have this no contact order. I just got out of jail. And I haven't even had a chance to go back to the house even I went to jail in my pajamas.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't have my vehicles. And I didn't have a phone because he smashed and destroyed my phone.
And jail in Florida is far away from your home.
Yeah.
Yes, I know.
And so I'm like, so I call my attorney and he doesn't answer because, it's like 10 o'clock at night. So I call CPS. I'm like, can I just run to the house and grab my car to go to the hospital? Like, I just got word that my baby is probably dead.
Yeah.
And so the CPS lady was like, yeah, as long as he's not there. Well, I knew he wasn't there because my older sister was talking to him on the phone, kind of, playing both sides here, trying to get information. So she called me and said, Stephany, he's not at the house. Just run to the house, grab your stuff.
Right.
And so I went to the house and got my vehicle, got my dog, got my 2 biological children who were there. And then I grabbed all my files and stuff and got out of there so fast as I could and took my kids and my dog to a safe house and then went to the hospital. And at the hospital, I could tell something was up because all the security guards were there. And it was like, he freaking told them that there was that I couldn't have any contact with my baby.
Right.
So I had to, put CPS on the phone and all this stuff and have them say,
and isn't it
no.
funny how they get very legally smart and know how to twist the system as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I just needed to know if my baby was alive or dead because no one would tell me. And he was, so I got to the hospital and I held him and I knew I was going to get, I knew he was going to recall the cops on me.
Yeah, really?
And oh yeah, he's he is one of the most evil. He is probably the most evil person I've ever met. And so I hold my baby for about an hour, and then one of the nurses comes in. She's like, "Hey, Stephanie, the cops are looking for you. They're all over the hospital looking for you." And I was like, "Well, I'm not ready to go back to jail yet. I need to go deal with my other two kids first." And so I'm like, "Where's the back way? Get me out of here." So
Yeah.
it seriously felt like a movie.
Yeah.
I was just praying, dear God, let me be invisible. I'm not ready to go back to jail at this moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I did get out of there, and my car was like surrounded by 10 cop cars. And I just walked to my car, got in it, and drove off.
Oh, lucky.
And I was like praying the entire time. And so, the next morning I knew I had to go turn myself in. I was going to go to jail and just, get it over with. But this time I was more prepared.
Right.
I knew what to wear. I knew what to expect.
You knew when to ask
It's
for a ride to come get you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I knew how bail worked and stuff. And so thankfully everything was dropped. And even the CPS were like, "You're not the victim here." And that's a whole nother topic, or we can talk about the wrong person being arrested and the judicial system, which is
Yeah.
so messed up.
Yes, I spent a lot of time in the Florida shelters, and I spent time with women who were beat the hell up and they went to jail. They were arrested and they had legal issues because of their abusers. And so that's a whole nother podcast I think we could record, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's true. They do anything they can to try to catch you up in a charge so that you're more dependent on them and you're less likely to leave.
Oh yeah. Well, and it's also to make you look bad. Like
Uh-huh.
when I first went to jail, and they have their smear campaign, he texted my mugshot to every single person I know. He probably put it on Facebook, or social media. I have no idea. But I do know, because all my friends were like, of course, no one believed him, but he sent my mugshot and was like, "Finally, Stephany's been abusing me for years. I'm
Oh
so
God.
glad it is finally over, and I finally have some justice." Just disgusting things like that. And my friends all know me.
I have letters that my ex-mother-in-law from my second husband sent the judge that said I beat him up and she saw it, all of his 6'2" behind. So yeah, I am 100%. I get it, Stephany, 100%. So here's my question. You go through all this and now it's attacked your record and all this. How did you get away, stay away, and heal from that?
So thankfully I have very good friends. I have very strong families. And they of course didn't believe a single word out of his mouth. And anyone who knows you, they know you.
Yeah.
And so I got away, and went completely no contact. And I am an EFT practitioner, and I think because I have a lot of these tools, and because I have a strong support system, I could be much more of a mess than I am.
Mm-hmm.
But I have just spent hours and hours and months and years doing EFT, working on the trauma, sitting with the stuff, to where it is so natural. When something comes up, I recognize it, I let it go. I sit with it, I recognize it, and I let it go. But it was definitely very hard in the beginning. I've gone back and read through some of my journals, and it's like, "I love you, I hate you, I love you, I hate you." It's like, okay, well, that's the trauma bond.
Yep. And so now in reflection, if you can look back, do you see how you weren't operating as your true self when you were with him?
Oh, absolutely. And people, I would tell people, like, I fell in love with his potentials because after 4 years of him being together, we were still in the same place. Like, we had gone nowhere. Like I said, we
Yeah.
were just on this like hamster wheel.
Hamster
And when
wheel.
you're in a relationship, in a marriage, you want to make each other better. You want to push each other. You want to keep rising up. And
Yeah.
we weren't. We were just going nowhere. And
Yeah.
I was the one who was doing everything. I was taking care of all the children, 6, mind you. Half of
Yeah.
them went to private school with uniforms. The other half went to these schools. They all played soccer and they played on multiple soccer clubs. And it was like, I was the one doing all of this. I did all the doctors, all the dentists, everything,
Perfect
all the
home.
bills, the house cleaning. Oh yeah,
Table.
yeah, everything.
Needs
And
are
he didn't do
met. Because a
anything.
narcissist
Yeah.
has huge needs and they want their needs met before the children's.
Oh yeah, yeah. And he would complain like, oh, you've spent all your day, you just did all of this stuff, and like you don't even love me. You're not even hanging out with me. Well, God, by the time I put everyone to bed and I've done everything, it's almost 10 o'clock at night and I'm exhausted. I
Exactly.
don't have any more. I would tell him, I'm like, help me. And you
Yes.
know what he would do? He would start crying. Oh, you don't understand. I can't. And my back hurts or this or that. It's like, then
Mhm.
hire someone to help me. Okay, okay. But it's like every conversation that had to do with anything, like we should be able to have these healthy conversations. He would shift it all to where he's the victim and he can't do anything. And so it was like stuff needed to get done. And so if he's not going to do it, that means I have to do it. I did
Yep.
all the yard work. I did all the housework. I did all the grocery shopping. I did all
Oh,
this stuff. And, it was like such a huge burden. And that's what these relationships are. They are huge burdens.
yes.
But there is freedom on the other side. And
Yes.
it's just, it's that trauma bond though, that you really have to break that trauma bond and really focus on yourself and your healing. And yeah, and don't look back because it is not worth it. And I'm so glad going back to I manifested him. I did manifest him, and God, universe, spirit, and all its greatness gave me all the unhealed lessons. And I'm just
Yeah.
thankful that it
Yeah.
didn't take 15 years, that it only took 4 years. And of those 4 years, we were separated for about a year. So
Yeah.
really, it was just 3 years.
Yeah.
And I am grateful that I was able to get out of there as quickly as I
Yeah.
got in there.
Yeah. And you're helping others through your story because no matter how much education, no matter how much you think that you are a strong person, when a narcissist walks in your life, they have a way to unravel that. And they're looking for the strong because I also in
Mm-hmm.
my life have even the most well-meaning friends will say to me, well, what do you do to bring this on? I'm a
Yeah.
strong, independent woman. That's what I do. And if you look up a definition of a narcissist, they like someone who is strong because when they break that strong person down, that makes them puff up and feel superior.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're feeding a need of theirs, an insecurity of theirs.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. But I also feel though, when you have learned the lessons too, so for so long I was stuck in this victim mindset, like why me? Like I didn't do anything. Like, why does all this stuff keep happening to me? All this big, heavy stuff. Like, I was a good person. I came from a good family. I was a good person. I did everything right. I went to college. I traveled the world. I went to law school. I passed the bar. It's like I've done all these good things.
Yeah.
And so for so long, I was stuck in this victim mindset. And it wasn't until when I was leaving Florida, actually, I was out boating with friends, and my UV glasses broke, and that's how I lost my eyesight. I sunburned my eyes so bad that I couldn't see for almost 6 weeks.
Oh man.
And, so I'm sitting here unable to see, just stuck in victimhood of all this shit just keeps happening to me over and over and over again. And I really felt like God said, Stephany, you are not seeing your story through the right lens. You
Yeah.
need to see your story. You need to become the hero of your story, because as a victim, we're giving that power back to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm
Absolutely.
not having any power when I'm stuck in my victim story. And so I really had to shift that perspective. And this was part of my healing as well. Seeing my story through a different lens, making me the hero of my story, not the victim, and not giving my power to them.
Yeah.
And when I made myself the hero, I could see the lessons finally. And I could say, thank you. Thank you, Josh, my first husband. Thank you for showing me that boundaries are so important,
Right.
because I
Yeah.
was boundaries for him, and then going into my second marriage. Okay, thank you, Jace, for showing me that even though I went in with boundaries, you kept pushing my boundaries, and I kept
Who's moving that
letting you
line?
do that. Yeah. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
so it's like you just have no boundaries then.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so, now I can say I've learned the lessons, I have healed, and I have broken the patterns,
Yeah. And you're letting it go too. That's huge,
letting it go.
because if you don't let it go, you end up swallowed up by bitterness. If you
Yeah.
stay in victim mode, you basically stay in the same repeated relationships because you can't be independent. You're always dependent. And so it's so important. And the way you broke it down, your story is, it's like, man, where were you 15 years ago before I was learning my lessons, when I couldn't understand how I kept getting these people in my life? Because for me,
Mm-hmm.
it was like a carbon copy, just in a different body. And the story would be the same. I was always wondering, how come you can't be that man you were when you came to me so in love?
Yeah. Right.
Or
Right.
I'd find myself saying the things that they love about me, people love about me in the beginning, they hate about me in the end, and just stuff like that. And it's because that's who they were, and I was unable to recognize that.
Well, and like we said, when you're in the middle of it, you don't know. Something is not right, but it is very difficult to pinpoint what it is.
Yeah, and we often go to blaming ourselves, and like you were doing, I was doing the
Mm-hmm.
same thing, all the work on myself. Well, if I just did what he said, if I didn't do this and I didn't do this and I made sure this was all perfect, and suddenly you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off, but you're never making those marks because they're never
Mm-hmm.
satisfied.
Exactly. And it's
So,
not up to us.
right, right. And that's another thing we need to understand, is it isn't up to us. It's up to us to look out for us. And that's
Yes.
and then that would probably help us make those better decisions. So talk about how you help people and where people can find you for healing.
Yeah, yeah. So right now I'm just doing one-on-one EFT with anyone who feels like they're struggling to go no contact because they want to reach out, or is struggling to break the trauma bond, because it is a trauma bond. It is something that has to be broken.
Mhm.
And after so many years of being manipulated and the gaslighting, it has rewired our brain.
Mhm.
And so we really have to rewire our brain for the good, and let go of the stuff, for instance, anxiety. A lot of people come to me with a lot of heavy anxiety. Well, anxiety is your body telling you you are unsafe. It's your
Mhm.
body saying, red flag, something's going
Yep.
on. And
Yep.
then when you get out of that relationship and you are safe, your body is still stuck in anxiety,
Yep.
because your body still doesn't know that you are fully safe. And so, I do a lot of tapping on anxiety. No, you need to tell your body that your body is safe. Thank you, anxiety. You were there when I needed you. I don't need you now, so you can go. And just doing all the releases. So right now I'm doing one-on-one with anyone who's interested. I was still working on my website. I don't want to throw in a whole other big thing, but my first husband actually committed suicide 3 weeks ago. And
Oh,
so I've had to rethink a lot of the stuff I'm doing right now. And so right now, that's all I'm doing is just working one-on-one with a few people right now because I really have to focus on my children at this time. And my children know how to tap as well. I've done a lot of EFT with them. We do, this is for listeners out there who have small children. Um, they've gone through everything that you've gone through.
yeah.
And so I've always been very open and honest with my children about everything. And this is why a couple of hours after my ex-husband died, my 9-year-old said, "Hey mom, we can go travel the world now." Yes, that is his way of saying we are free.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I do EFT with them, and we do a lot of guided meditation and visualizations as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
So So right now I'm just working with people. So you can reach out to me through my email and I will give you those links. I'm on LinkedIn, my email, and just on Facebook right now. I've had to halt everything else and just really, I just need to take some time to really help my boys walk through all of
Yeah,
this right now.
absolutely. Well, and when you're done with that, I do want to have you back on because I want to talk more about getting arrested and being you're the victim, but yet you're the accused and the
Oh
jailed.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. And
that's a whole nother subject as well.
it is. And especially, and again, with my background, I'm an attorney.
Yeah.
Everyone, even, this was also his way of trying to get me disbarred.
Hmm.
And, thankfully the judges and everyone could see through his BS and see how pathetic he was and what he was doing, because it was just, especially when I got the second, when I went back to jail the second time for violating the restraining order, which, some
During it.
exigent circumstances. I mean, I just grabbed my car because I thought my child was dead.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
the judges could see through all of that.
Wow. Stephany, do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with listeners?
Yeah. If you are in a relationship and you know that something is off, but you don't know what it is, it could be that you are in a relationship with a narcissist and it is domestic violence. Whether it's cheating is domestic violence.
Yeah.
Emotional abuse, psychological abuse, this is all domestic violence. If you have said, "Stop doing this, it's hurting me," and they continue to do it, that is violence
Yeah.
against you. It does not just have to be physical. And then we do have the keys within us. I mean, we yet to heal. You just might need some tools in your toolbox. And one of the tools that has worked very well for me is EFT. And if you would like to learn more, I would love for you to reach out and let's connect. And I will show you the power of EFT so that you can truly find freedom and become empowered and
Yeah.
live your most beautiful, authentic life, because we do not have to live in the past.
Yeah.
And really just breaking the patterns, because you've been in multiple relationships with narcissists. I have too. And I will
Yeah.
tell you, I have shifted all of that. I have broken those patterns. Like, I do not have to fear being in another relationship. And
Same.
so many of us fear that, but we
Mhm.
don't have to fear it. We can break the patterns.
Yep. And it can be very empowering.
It is
Mhm.
very empowering for
Mhm.
sure. And there's a lot of good people out there.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Stephany, thank you so much. And we're gonna have another conversation in the future, I promise.
Yes, I would love to, for sure.
Awesome.
Have a baby on top of the bunk bed screaming, "Mom,
Yeah.
mom."
Thank you for spending time listening to our conversation. If you enjoyed this and other episodes, please subscribe, like, and share so we can reach more listeners with our powerful messages. And stay tuned to hear about our affiliates and recommendations. They change from episode to episode.